I've completed the spots on this leopard, and I've also completed all the detail on the face and the features. And you'll see I've also put a large amount of the background in, but I want to talk about that later. Let's just look at the leopard. I want you to see how it's very important when you're doing spots that you follow the contour of the animal. So in order to suggest the roundness of this tummy, I have brought the spots around in an arc to suggest the roundness. Earlier I said how important it is as the spots are going away from you around a rounded shape. As they're going away from you, the spots get narrower and narrower towards the edge. And I hope you can see in the legs how here in the front, facing us, the spots have rounded shapes. As they go away to the side of the leg, the spots get narrower and narrower. Okay? I was quite careful to show a lot of reflected light here underneath the jawline, because I didn't want the face to get lost in the spots on the shoulder there. So I've actually exaggerated the reflected light there, especially as the ground is collecting so much light. I've on purpose left this ground absolutely white except for a few light contours, so this very light, bright surface that she's walking on would be reflecting light up here anyway, and it keeps her face separate from the rest of her body. I haven't rubbed out the edges. I haven't rubbed out the masking fluid yet, and I haven't rubbed out my pencil marks. I've on purpose not shown up the edge of the leg because I wanted to have a lost light edge here. So I've got lost light edges on the legs. I've got some lost darker edges here at the back of the leopard. I've got some light areas against dark, and I've got some dark areas against lighter areas, the shadow side of the legs. So I've got a good mix of light against dark and dark against light, and lost light edges and lost dark edges, which I've stressed earlier in these modules, the importance of this. I'm not terrible. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've done in the background. I'm not very happy with two things, actually three things. The way it's worked out, the focal line here at the back, in the focal line in the landscape at the back, is too central on the page, and I think it was quite it was a bit of a mistake. I would have liked to put this more or less at eye level, which would have made it closer to a third, but my problem was that if I'd done that, then the whiskers wouldn't have shown. I needed to have some dark here against the whiskers to show them up. And what does this tell you? It tells you that I didn't do my planning sketch sufficiently carefully. I rushed at it, because this is the sort of thing that should become evident in your planning sketch. An important thing like the whiskers must be able to show up against dark, otherwise you can't show them up any other way. You can't paint them in white. They can only remain white against dark. So this might have affected my whole placement of this leopard. I think I should have put him further up on the paper and shifted him right up and had the focal line of the foliage higher up, which would have given a better division of the format. I'm not mad about this half and half. Also, the second thing I'm not happy with is the fact that this leopard is carrying this parcel of light on her back, and the background isn't showing up the little line of light that I've carefully retained here at the top. And I think I'm going to put a little bit more dark against the back there to show up the light that is being caught in her fur. And I'm not mad about this tree. So I'm going to show you how you can take out errors. We're going to work a little bit with this tree. I'm going to try and make it bigger. I'm going to try and make this tree a little bit bigger, so that it approximates the background trees here. Why I did this one smaller, I don't know. It doesn't fit. So I'm going to take this tree out to some extent and show you how you can get mistakes out. And while we're talking about these trees in the background, please note that I've tried to suggest these trees going back and back and back into the space at the back, which means that I started with the very light ones first. Can you see at the back, the very pale ones, they went in first. And then I darkened my colours slightly and I went in with the slightly closer ones. And then I darkened my colours again and I went in with the slightly closer. So bringing 1, 2, 3 planes of trees coming towards us. As things come towards us, they darken. As they go back, they lighten. First of all, I'm just going to rub my masking fluid out and see what the impact of these whiskers is. You can rub out with your finger, the ball of your finger if it's very dry, or rub out with your rubber. It takes a certain amount of care, and please be very careful when you're rubbing out masking fluid that your paper is absolutely bone dry. If it's not bone dry and you rub it, all sorts of nasty things will happen. The whiskers on this side are not showing up very much, I don't think, because largely they're against the white of her chest. Sometimes when you've taken the masking off, you'll find that it's much too sharp, and this is a very odd shape that I've got there. I must have blobbed it. And they can be softened. They can be softened with a little bit of watercolour paint, so that they're not quite so sharp. And I'm rubbing out my lost light edges on my legs so that there's no line visible at all. And I had a little bit of masking in the ear where a few whiskers were just picking up the light on the shadow side. There was a little bit in the tail, just to give a little bit of excitement in the tail. And that was all the masking that I did. Right, so she's looking all right. I'm going to just have to fix up a little bit there. I'm using my big brush to get all the rubbings off. Not a good idea to rub your hand over your painting. Right, now I want to show you how to get stakes out. For erasing watercolour from watercolour paper, I find that a little quite hard bristled acrylic or oil brush does the trick very nicely. And as long as you haven't used a very staining colour, the watercolour should come out fairly easily by just wetting and dabbing. Sometimes it takes a little bit of coaxing, but often you can get out enough to make your alteration without too much of a problem. Some paints have much stronger staining qualities than others, and you should get to know the qualities of the paints in your paint box. What you can do is just make a little table, a little bar, paint a little bar of each colour that you have and name it, and let it dry, and then wash out 1/2 of the little bar, and you will see how staining it is, or how easily it will come out. And then make little notes so that you know in future. The staining colours are often the very beautiful transparent colours. So I've taken off enough in the middle, I think, to be able to extend this tree and get it to look higher. I'm going to leave that to dry. While that dries, I'm going to add a little bit of tone to the back of this leopard so that it's not exhibiting this curve of light in the curve of the back. I've used ultramarine blue and brown madder for my background colours. That's all I've used, it's only blue and the madder. I've worked very, very softly with lots and lots of water. Now, I want this light on her rump to show up well. So I'm just suggesting foliage here. Always leave lots of negative spaces when you're doing foliage, otherwise it becomes a solid blob. Just dropping it in wet and wet, letting it run down towards the edge that I want to stress. I think that's better. The back is showing up better, and the packet of light on her back has gone, but I've still left a lost light edge there. I think this pink is perhaps a little bit too much. I'm just sucking up a little of it. Right. It's not quite dry. I'm going to tackle it in a minute. This is dry enough now, and I'm going to attempt to raise the stature of this tree and make it fit in with the others a little bit better. Notice I do it very loosely and more or less without drawing. Softening the ends so that they don't come too blunt and unpleasant. Don't be frightened to put lots of cross branches in to soften it. very fat brush. I should really have changed to a rigger for these twigs, but I haven't. So I'm just softening the ends a little so that they just become invisible. To lose some of the branches a little in some foliage, otherwise it becomes too sharp and dominant in the painting. I want it just to fit back. It must go back into the landscape. It mustn't come forward at us. It mustn't be too noticeable. Okay, something like that. You can experiment with your own trees. They're fun to do like this, scumbling with the side of the brush. I think we covered this in an earlier module. So we've got some sharp edges here and some edges lost in the scumbling. Lastly, I want to say something about signing your painting. Look for a good place to position your signature. In this painting, I would probably put my signature here so that it balances. It's part of the whole thing. It must look as though it fits in. I would put my signature here, partly to balance the preponderance of weight on this side. Don't use an alien color. Use a color that you've already used. Make it just legible enough to be seen, but not overpowering, and large enough to be seen with the naked eye without somebody having to go up and peer. So I would probably use this bluey grey that I've been using for the foliage. I would put it in this little contour here, and I would make it that big so somebody could see it without glasses, and yet it's not immediately overpoweringly visible. I like to put the date that I painted this. I always put my year on. I find it's useful for looking back over your work to see your progression. Also, when you're very famous, it will help somebody to catalogue your work if they have the painting date on it.